Your team ignores your procedures. Documents are what control feels like. Design is what control actually is. The smoothest running companies I've worked with have fewer procedures than you have right now. Today, I want to show you why documentation can't change behavior as long as it lives outside the work, what actually will change it, and why. Your team ignores your procedures, and they're correct to do so. Not because the procedures are wrong, but because work has to move. Customers are waiting, the crew is on site, the quote is due by 5. And stopping in the middle of all of that to find a document and read it slows everything down. And it still doesn't guarantee that the work will come out right or on time. So your people do what capable people under pressure have always done. They run on memory and habit, which means the company that you believe is covered by all of these procedures is actually running on recall. And that's the real problem with the binder and the shared drive. The knowledge lives in one place and the work happens somewhere else. So a procedure that isn't where the work is might as well not exist. Now, at this point, the standard advice is usually to write better SOPs, you make them shorter, you add screenshots, you do some retraining efforts. I'm going to take you in the opposite direction. Today, I want to show you why documentation can't change behavior as long as it lives outside the work, what actually will change it, and why the smoothest running companies I've worked with have fewer procedures than you have right now. Not more, fewer. I'm Dori Etter, and this is Below the Waterline, the leadership work no one else talks about. Let's get into it. So if you were to open the folder where your procedures live, the shared drive, maybe it's a binder, and you read nothing except the dates on your documents, here's what you would almost certainly find. Created 2 years ago. Modified 2 years ago. Last opened, 2 years ago. You can actually go look for yourself after you listen to this episode if you'd like. The fact is, the dates tell the story that the documents can't. Somebody built all of this. There was a lot of work that went into it. And then everybody, including you, went back to running the company from memory. Now, why do we usually build this procedures manual? Why do we build out all of these things? Well, usually it's because something happened. Something that was business critical. Maybe a big job goes wrong and has to be redone at the company's cost. Maybe a key project is misquoted and it costs you money and maybe even a client. Maybe materials don't arrive on time and it puts a project way behind the timeline. And that triggers something in you. And it turns documentation into this company-wide emergency. So you do what any good founder would do, and you look for that logical conclusion saying, let's do a process push. So for a month or maybe even a quarter, everyone documents. How do we quote? How we schedule? How we close out a job? At the end of that time, you're left with 47 documents. They go into a drive. You print out the checkout, the closeout checklist, and you laminate it. You put it on the door, and it felt great. Everybody feels good. The team really geared up. They pulled together. You, as the founder, you dug in. Like that instinct that we're not going to keep bleeding like this. It's like, oh, we did it. Then, unfortunately, 6 months later, the same mistakes are back. That laminated checklist, it's just turned into wallpaper. It's because not one of those 47 documents was ever inserted into the actions of the team. They describe the work, but they sit beside the work. And the work, which has to keep moving, kept moving without these static documents. So you might be asking, well, how has the company survived this long if this is such a problem? If you look closer, it's because you and key team members are holding it together. You've got an ops lead who spends part of every Friday chasing all the project managers for the numbers. You've got that veteran project manager who keeps her own private checklist and makes sure that the new people really understand the nuances of the process. You know, the part that didn't quite make it into the drive, that hasn't been updated in the last 2 years. You've got the bookkeeper who sends the same 3 nudges every month. See, the most experienced, most trusted people in your company are all working a second invisible job. They are the reminder system. Every one of those reminders is evidence that the process doesn't fire on its own. Someone has to fire it. And your strongest people are spending their judgment on remembering to do that. Now, if you're a founder whose growth has flattened out, this is the pattern that's hiding inside your margins right now. Every redone job is margin. Every miss caught late is a margin. Undesigned behavior repeated at scale looks like you have a market problem, but you don't. Let me point out the one process in your company that has never failed: payroll. In 20 years of doing this work, I have never heard a founder say payroll keeps falling through the cracks. And yet, nobody has read your payroll SOP in years. Payroll never fails because there's a system built to fire it on a schedule every time, whether anyone remembers, whether it's a brutal week, whether the person who set it up is even still there. So let's hold these two things side by side. 47 well-written documents that changed nothing, and one process that nobody reads and yet never breaks. You've been told that that is a discipline problem. I'm here to tell you it was never a discipline problem. It's a design problem. So let's talk about where behavior actually lives, because this is the piece that changes everything. Behavior happens in an environment. Your estimator's behavior happens inside the estimating tool. Your crew's behavior happens in the truck and on the site. Behavior happens where the work happens at the speed the work happens. And yet your documents live somewhere else, always somewhere else, which means for a document to change behavior, 6 things have to happen in order voluntarily. I have to remember it exists. I have to stop working to find it, read it, interpret it, finally apply it. All of this under pressure. In that moment is when I need the procedure the most, but it's also the moment when nobody has a bandwidth for any of those steps. See, a document is a set of instructions waiting to be looked up, but behavior doesn't wait. So here's the distinction this whole episode hangs on. Documents describe behavior, environments produce it. Here's an example in action that we've all experienced. Think about a speed limit sign, and then think about a speed bump. The sign is information. It describes the behavior we'd like, and whether anything changes depends on the driver noticing, agreeing, and complying every single time. The speed bump doesn't describe anything. It decides. It's not a request. It's the literal shape of the road. Nobody reads a speed bump, and yet everybody slows down. And if part of you is thinking, well, my business is too complicated for speed bumps, I want to show you the 2 professions that live or die on execution, because they both landed in the same place. In 1935, Boeing rolled out the most advanced airplane ever built. That plane became the B-17. On a demonstration flight with one of the Army's very best pilots at the controls, it crashed on takeoff. They called the plane unflyable, but it was really because of one missed step. And in their analysis of what happened, the conclusion wasn't to retrain the pilots. These were the best trained pilots in the country. The conclusion was that the airplane had simply become too much for any one person's memory. So the fix was the pre-flight checklist. And that airplane that they'd called unflyable went on to fly millions of miles safely. Now, 70 years later, surgery did the same thing. A team led by the surgeon Atul Gawande built a 2-minute checklist for operating rooms and tested it in 8 hospitals around the world. Deaths fell by nearly half. Complications fell by more than a third. 2 minutes. Now, stay with me, because you're probably thinking a checklist is a document. So why does it work when your binder doesn't? Location and trigger. See, the checklist doesn't live in a manual in the crew room. It's literally read out loud in the cockpit at a fixed moment before the wheels are allowed to move. Same in the operating room before the incision. So the knowledge was moved into the moment of work and wired to a trigger. That's not documentation. That's environment design that looks like a document without close inspection. Inside alignment architecture, this is a founding principle, and we say it exactly this way. We don't write procedures. We build systems that make the right behavior the only behavior. Change doesn't come from documentation. It comes from environment design. So what do speed bumps look like in a company? Well, let me give you some examples. A required field on a form. The field job cannot be closed without the photo attached. Not crews should always attach a photo, but literally a job form that will not close without a photo attached. Now the form is now the procedure. Think about a template that carries a standard inside it. Your estimating calculator. It's got your pricing rules built into the cells. There's no pricing document to consult and no way to produce a price that breaks your rules. Just this week, I was working with a client's leadership team on designing a new company-wide weekly meeting that will include an update from each department head. The question was asked, who's going to remind everyone on Friday to get their updates in? That's not designing an environment where the right behavior is the only behavior. Instead, we'll have an AI agent send out an automated request to each department head. The response back to that same agent will go automatically onto the meeting agenda. Nobody compiles it, nobody chases it. So then the next question was, well, what happens on Monday if someone didn't submit to the AI agent? I said, everyone in the company will see it on Monday, and we'll let that department head be embarrassed. That's the environment providing accountability. No one is going to let that happen to them twice. So with this environment design, it's no one's job to follow up, but it becomes clear both quickly and easily if something falls through the cracks. Now, these are all different tools. They share a same signature. In every one of them, the right thing happens without anyone having to remember it. It's not that nothing changes. The pre-flight checklist requires an extra few minutes for every flight. But the benefit of that extra effort is obvious and far outweighs the bit of extra time. This is the kind of thinking that makes environment design effective. In the last episode, I showed you how to map the way work flows across your company. And I said that map is the blueprint. This environment design is the wiring. It's the thing that creates the triggers that make the work actually happen. And we've got incredible new tools to help us impact the design. And I know there's a lot of talk about it right now, but frankly, not enough companies are thinking about how embedding this into their operations can really transform. Of course, what I'm talking about is AI. See, documentation used to be passive by nature. Knowledge sat in a file until a human went and got it. But with AI, knowledge can act now. We have so many new ways to insert the process right into the environment. I already shared one way we're using it with a client of mine, and I want to give you a few more ideas. So imagine knowledge that answers. Imagine you load your procedures into an AI assistant that your team can actually talk to or type to. They're mid-task, right from the truck, right from the desk. They can ask, what's our process when the client changes scope after signing? And the answer arrives right there in their moment of need. Or take agendas. Like the checklist, agendas are a great way to build the process into the environment. And with AI, no one person has to be responsible for building the agenda each week. You can design an agent that follows the track from meeting to meeting, gathers from humans, like in my example above, and has the updated agenda ready without deep intervention. There's so many opportunities in this particular arena. I can't even go into them all. One of my favorite ways to use AI is that firing the triggers that ensure information moves from one seat to another. It's a follow-up that sends itself. It's the handoff that announces itself. It's the number that posts itself to the scorecard. See, I'm designing and implementing a lot of these systems for myself and my clients these days. And it's so exciting how much easier it is to truly deliver systems that make the right behavior the only behavior. The spirit of the procedure manual doesn't have to just be in a folder waiting to be remembered. It can become an active participant in your team's workflow using the power of AI. Now, because this podcast is titled Below the Waterline, there is one more thing I'd like to touch on. If documentation fails this predictably, why do we keep choosing it? And there are two reasons. First, documentation wins because it's simply easier. A document asks you to spend an afternoon. You can complete it and feel like you've accomplished something. If you're doing environment design, you have to do some real work. You have to understand how the work actually flows. You have to get into the tools that your people use. You have to involve your team. You are most likely going to have a first version that you're going to have to adjust and work through until you get something that really supports the process, the team, and the outcome you're looking for. It's not a light lift, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. But the second reason is a below the waterline reason. A finished document feels like control. It's visible, it's done. You can point to it at the end of a hard week and say, I've accomplished something. And as long as the story is my team won't follow the process, the constraint lives in them. The moment that you accept that behavior follows design, the constraint moves into the design, which is where you as a founder and leader have far more responsibility. Documents are what control feels like. Design is what control actually is. The fact is, your company already runs on environment design. It has for years. The environment is you and your 2 or 3 strongest people. The Friday chase, the private checklist, the final look before something goes out. That's people being the shape of the road at the cost of their judgment and their hours. You didn't fail to build the system. You and your best people actually became it. Now, the same care that has you all catching everything by hand is the care that can build something that catches it for you. So we don't stop caring, but where we install the care changes. Now, most founders think their processes fail because people won't follow them. But processes fail because they were designed to need following. So here's my invitation this week, and I'm calling it the one-line move. First, I'd like for you to pick a mistake that sort of keeps coming back. You probably could think of it right now if you need a couple of minutes. Think of something that just won't sort of die, a problem that won't die. Then I want you to find its documented procedure, because there almost certainly is one. And you can check the date while you're there. Now, that is what it looks like now. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at that document and find the single most important line in that document. The thing that if it happened predictably every time would actually kill the mistake. It's maybe one line, maybe 2. Then I want you to take that to the people who actually do the work. They live inside this environment every day, and they know better than anyone what would make that impossible to miss. Ask them, what would have to be true in your day for this to happen every time without anyone having to remember it? Then you build the speed bump together. Is it a required field, a line in a template, a standing agenda item, a box the tool won't let anyone skip? It's going to be one line designed with the people who live in it. Now, while you're doing this, I want to make sure that you are sharing the why. Why does this matter? You want to share the context. One of my fundamental operating principles is that people need context to do what's right. If you hand someone a rule with no reason, you haven't built a system. You've built a team member who is going to do something because they were told to, not because they understand it and can apply that in multiple situations. But if you spend just 30 seconds explaining why, it will turn a rule into judgment. See, a rule tells them what, but a context lets a team member own it. And that empowers them to carry it into all the situations, even if the document doesn't point directly to that specific situation. That's the difference between having a team that follows directions and a team that navigates towards your goals. So I'd like for you to actually change the environment for that one line and see what kind of impact that makes. Then imagine scaling this one line move across the company, so that your systems make the right behavior the only behavior. Now, if this episode has you seeing your company a little differently, whether it's the binder on the shelf, the Friday reminders, or the 3 people quietly holding everything together, I'd like to let you know that this work is exactly what I do with founders. And this fall, I'm going to be opening a small group program. I'm calling it the Founder Freedom Accelerator. It's in-depth work with a handful of founders building this architecture both above and below the waterline side by side. If this is something you would be interested in hearing more about, I'm just starting to simply gather an interest list. There's a link in the show notes that you can say you might be interested in hearing about that. Before we wrap up, I'm going to give you the whole episode in 3 lines. Documents describe, environments decide. Nobody reads a speed bump, and everybody slows down. Stop writing rules, build the behavior into the road with the people who drive it every day. That's what makes it stick.